you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 go. Hustle hard, hustle every single day. I'll be making moves till I'm buried in my grave. To the system, I don't wanna be a slave. I've been doing shit my way, or the highway. And in the driveway is a nice range. Cause I grind through the climb, I invite pain. You'll never hear me, bitch, nah, I don't complain. Just gotta flip the switch and you can go and obtain anything you want, anything you need. Your mind's got the key ingredient, it's belief. They'll deceive with the negativity, but I just slide right by that energy. Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 go. You got a mind, but even that could change. You could flip the gray matter like some batter in your brain. That's why I say, fake it till you make it A. And if you play that game, then you just might.
Oh, I do not like the way this camera makes me look. So this is an older camera. This is not my old one from back in the day, 10 years ago. But this is like maybe a 6-year-old, 7-year-old camera. Oh, it looks terrible. I look so fat. All right, doesn't matter. Okay, so today we are doing Taoism. As promised, I am here. We are doing this. Sorry about missing yesterday. For those that don't know, I just started a new purely commissioned job, so I was exhausted and I fell asleep, just being straight up. On top of that, my camera, when I tried to set up for the night, died. This guy right here is not being picked up by anything, so hope I make some money soon. All right, let's do this. We got some Taoism to do today. We're gonna go through. I also got some books in the mail today, which I thought was kind of cool. I got myself the Hagukra and another copy of the Book of Tea. I got the wrong version. I wanted to get the one in the slipcase. It looked really awesome, but it doesn't matter. So, for those that don't know, just all cards on the table, I was a Taoist for 10 years, over 10 years. So, when I rejected the Bible at 13, whatever, I was kind of like lost for a little bit. And at 15, I tried to read it again. Didn't work, didn't take. So, my uncle gave me a book of the Tao Te Ching, the Book of Five Rings, and a book on some kind of yogic practice. Again, I don't remember what that one was. And I've read the Tao Te Ching every year from the age of 15, at least once a year, sometimes twice a year, all the way until I was 30, while I was teaching martial arts between 25 and 30 and 31, I guess. Let's say that. Every time I would have a class or I'd have a group of students of 3 or more, we would use the Tao Te Ching as our meditation for the day. So, along with the Art of War and the Book of Five Rings. So we'd go through that cycle. When we got through all 3 books, basically that was the end of the session, and you'd have to sign up for a new session after that. Okay. Let's begin over here. Boom.
You've all seen this symbol before, but it holds a lot more meaning than you may realize. Let's begin.
T.
We call it Tai Chi Tu, made of yin part and yang part. So you can call it a yin-yang picture. Now, it towards sunset. Now, the sun is setting. This is the time from the daytime go to nighttime. So eventually, yang become yin, yin become yang, yang become yin, yin become yang become yin. Always, in every day, each day, that happens. So this shows the coexistence of two opposites. No matter how different they are, they can stay very peacefully.
So now you know the basics. Let's explore a little bit deeper.
So that's not the explanation in any of the books that I ever got on the yin and the yang. I've always heard chaos and order, and the masculine and the feminine. That's always the way that I've had it explained to me, whether from the books or from instructors. And anyone who's done martial arts should be familiar with this anyway.
About the wisdom behind the yin yang.
This, darn it.
The yin yang depicts two opposing forces, but this shouldn't be confused with the ideas of conflict. It's very common in Western culture to think about good versus evil,
Really
life
hope that
versus
it's not
death,
copyrighted.
and light versus dark. This language creates the idea that we should cultivate the light and destroy the dark. But to a Taoist, this sort of thinking is as incomprehensible as having a magnet without both the north and south pole.
Yeah, you have to integrate. So anyone from a Western tradition that talks about integrating the shadow and doesn't use a Jungian perspective, this is what it's talking about. So you want to, if you're a male person, you want to have a integration of your female aspect, and if you're a female person, you want to have integration of your male aspect. That doesn't mean you want to act feminine if you're a guy, or that you want to act masculine if you're a woman. It means that the parts of you that are more present. So you present masculine, you have the muscles, you want to use them, you want to use your masculinity, but you also want to grow your femininity. You don't want to be lacking on either side. So you want to do something hard, and you want to do something soft. Same thing in reverse. If you're a woman, female presenting, I guess I should say, and you're very soft, you don't want to be so soft that you're fragile. You want to pick up the more, what we would call masculine characteristics in yourself. Same thing goes with chaos and order. You want to integrate the two into each other, but understand that in your personality, you're going to be more one than the other. So you're going to be either more masculine, and therefore you need to pick up your feminine so that way it stays healthy, or you're going to be more feminine, and you need to grow your masculine so you stay healthy. This is really good for if you're doing Tai Chi, or if you're doing in martial arts, if you're doing push-pull exercises where, like, say you're grappling and someone pushes and then they push back. This is really good for that kind of stuff.
Poles. They are part of the same system, so removing one is as good as removing the whole system. Let's put it like this: a population of only men on an island doesn't last very long. It's the interaction of opposites through which life is created. So that's the first lesson from the yin yang, that the world is full of and literally made of differences. It reminds us that opposites can live in harmony, that I can...
So again, this channel is dedicated to anti-apologetics. I have no idea if there's any grounding to this idea from any kind of empirical stance. Taoism seems to be purely philosophical, purely poetical. And that's actually one of the critiques that Confucius has against Taoism. So I think when Confucianism becomes strong in China, they actually suppress Taoism as a practice. And right now it's also a suppressed religion in China as well.
live my own life my way, and others can live their lives their way.
A Taoism has never started a war. Why? Because Taoism accepts that people can have different lives, have different religions and different cultures. So this is the natural law. So why people should kill each other?
It also reminds us.
So there is an element of Christianese when it comes to pacifism in Taoism. Taoism on the surface seems really compatible with Christianity. It's only when you get down into the nitty-gritty of Christian dogmatism that you realize that Taoism is not compatible with Christianity at all.
Us to sometimes embrace those things that we see as different or damaging to us. For example, in a relationship, your partner may do bizarre things that grind your gears. But through being compassionate to difference, you understand that you thinking your partner was perfect was due to you watching too many rom-coms. You understand that these differences are natural, and therefore by being open, you'll allow some of their characteristics to grow inside you to complement your own, making you a more well-balanced person. Existence of opposites. Instead, it tells a dynamic story, that of growth and decay and the ultimately cyclical nature of the universe.
Nature does not.
So it's interesting. One of the things that Christianity does, especially to Judaism, is that it pulls it out of the secular nature idea. So you have a culture in Judaism that separates itself out from the rest of the cultures, which are stuck in this kind of like Mesopotamian, Mediterranean thought bubble. And what happens with Christianity is that it revolutionizes the Jewish thought process. So it's a revolution or evolution of Jewish thought. But now, instead of countering the Mesopotamian ideas, the ideas from Assyria, Sumeria, and Egypt, you're now countering, and Hethia and Canaan, you're now countering Greek and Roman ideas. So Greek and Rome are stuck in a secular understanding that everything cycles through. So Christianity is fighting against that, which is another reason why ultimately Taoism and Christianity cannot be compatible.
Not complain about the winter, as there is a saying, since winter is already here, is the spring far from us? Nature does not complain about hot summer either. Change is always one part of the natural law.
This is because everything has both yin and yang aspects.
Change is constant.
There's always a bit
more
of
things change,
yin
the more
in
they
yang
stay the same.
and yang in yin. Without light, there's no shadow. A day has the seed of night. Nearness, although damaging, can make people look after their health. So you can see this in everything.
Mm-hmm.
As a result, as one quality reaches its peak, it naturally begins to transform into the other, creating an endless cycle. This can be seen throughout nature as crops reach their full height in summer, and then it dies back in the winter like it is here now. But the
And we're back.
And so again, that reflects on people who misunderstand Christianity, who they view it as one of these dying and returning rituals to have to do with the spring festival and the winter festival. That's not what's going on in Christianity. Christianity, it's a one-time event that's being remembered. In Taoism, it's a continual process. It never ends until you die. And even then, if you're on the one true path, which I think the one true path might actually influence Dune in its golden path, to be honest about it. Come on, let's get past this.
In 1936, a Japanese artist found the Chinese people to be rather indifferent to the invasion, with faintly amused expressions which seemed to say, "We've seen the likes of you many times before, and you too will go away." A sense of optimism is deeply embedded in Chinese culture. The yin-yang tells us that change is truly natural and to trust the world and all the changes it throws at us. It tells us that our problems too will one day pass.
If you really want to annoy people in your life, be both a Taoist and a Stoic. you'll piss off so many people because of your lack of reaction to everything. They'll think you either don't care or that you're not taking things seriously. And even if you try to explain to them that it's a philosophical or religious part of your practice of your life to stay calm, they'll get upset.
If we trust the process and embrace change rather than trying to resist it, we no longer need to be anxious about what's to come or try and cling on to what we have, because we know that things...
So again, anti-apologetics. I don't know if that's really true. I don't know if being a Taoist and following your chi and finding balance within yourself, A, I don't know if any of that's psychological in actuality, and B, I don't know if there's any grounding to that in real life. Like I said, practiced for over 10 years, and all it did was piss people off. It did not help people. It did not turn... So the idea with tea, so let's say you're making tea. The tea's super important to Taoism for some reason. And you're stirring the tea, and in the center of the tea, you're going to have this vortex happening. And the idea is that you want to be the center of that, so that way the storm's going around you, but you're fine in the center. That's kind of what happens when you practice it. So this is not exactly being truthful. He's selling you on Taoism, on the positive aspects of Taoism. But again, when you live in real life, you're just going to piss off people who don't understand what you're doing. When you practice this kind of super sedated centering, people don't like it.
This will be okay. And thus that we should accept differences and changes in our lives. If we do this, rather than fighting pointless battles, trying to eradicate our weaknesses or problems, fighting against the current, instead we'll let the water take us and float down the river with our head.
So this kind of thinking, again, works really well in martial arts. And so like when someone's charging at you, instead of clashing with them, either back up with them or move out of the way while they're flowing. So that way the person kind of goes like this. And you see this in like old martial arts movies, not so much anymore. But so instead of opposing the force, either go with the force or let the force pass. And then you can attack.
Heads above the water. Nature, by living in harmony with the world's currents in this way, is always balanced. And because we come from nature, we too can find balance in our lives. Now we're going to explore how to find balance in more detail in future videos, but I want to finish this one with something that I really found helpful.
In standing meditation, most of the time we use the posture this way.
So I'll be interested if this is actually China, and if it is, if this is... because most of the temples are not temples, they're actually state-run museums. The actual temples were destroyed. I went to this really cool temple. It's one of these things. I went to a really cool temple in China, and the entire temple was destroyed. But when they rebuilt it with the destruction that was on it before it was rebuilt. So even though it was brand new materials, any kind of damage from any warfare throughout history, they put that damage back into the structure. So I'm kind of wondering if this is if this guy's just at a museum acting as if he lives there, or if this is an actual Taoist temple.
So two hands. This we call tiger mouse. Tiger mouse. The two tiger mouse like coming together. So this makes harmonious, very harmonious. The yin and the yang coming together. So that means harmony, peace are coming together.
I think it's so nice that you can make your own little yin-yang wherever you go. So the next time you're feeling anxious or stressed, look down and be reminded that all the things we've talked about today, that the world is okay, that you're okay, that change is okay, and the power to find balance is within you.
Let's go to the next one.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Sorry I'm a bit late with this. This week's question is, how do you think you can apply the yin-yang to your own life? And what do you think about it as a concept? Let me know in the comments, and we've also got a discussion on Reddit as well, so the link is in the description.
If you're a business owner,
So, how to apply the yin yang into your own life? For the most part in the US, it's just art. It's just going to be background art. Okay, here we go again. Darn it.
The symbol, what exactly does it mean and how is it useful to us? Medicine, the theory of yin and yang. So what exactly is yin and yang? Yin and yang is a principal foundation of the universe, and it consists of two opposing forces, yin and yang. The medical classic of the Yellow Emperor is the most important text in Chinese medicine because it had laid a solid.
So, even though I don't practice it as a religion anymore, I still use it in my martial arts, and it's still useful when teaching students. So I used this is from the Book of Five Rings. There's 5 core methods, but there's 2 different understandings of it. So there's a Japanese samurai method, and then there's a Chinese medical method. And so there are different ones. So you have to understand which one you're going for. The Chinese method will include metal, and the Japanese method will instead have void, where metal would be on the little star triangle thing.
Foundation theory for Chinese medicine. And in this text, it has stated that yin and yang are the laws of heaven and earth, the principle of all things, the parents of all changes, the root of life and death. Ancient Chinese people observed the cyclical alternation of day and night. The original meaning of yin means shady side of the hill, while yang means the sunny side of the hill. Over time, people have observed and concluded in the universe, everything has 2 opposite aspects. And the theory of yin and yang has extended to all objects and phenomena that have 2 opposing forces. While yin represents the more...
One of the problems with yin and yang is that it leads to incredible binary thinking. So you start seeing everything in binaries, and if you look at things like chaos, or you look at other aspects, middling aspects, it doesn't leave room for that. So you can kind of get into a 4-square approach to Taoism, which is the white inside the dark, or the dark inside the light. But in reality, it just comes into binary thinking. So I do think that's one of the limitations of Taoism.
Passive and static aspect. Yang represents the more active and energetic aspect, such as dark and bright, cold and hot, death and life, female and male.
So a lot of people who don't practice Taoism or never practice yoga, surprisingly, even though this is not a Hindu idea at all, have a lot of problem with this idea. They get offended. They say, well, why is feminine or female tied into the dark or tied into chaos, and why is male or masculine tied into into order? It's not a play on modern politics. These books are older than the Bible. They're older by the Bible by maybe 1,000 years. These are truly ancient texts. Some people have tried to put Buddhism, Jesus, and Lao Tzu in the same time period, and even Sun Tzu in the same time period. That doesn't make sense historically. These are not only thousands of years apart, but they're happening in very different regions. So Jesus did not go and talk to the Buddha, even though a lot of people like to make stories like that. But yeah, you shouldn't get offended at the fact that femininity is listed on the chaos or the dark. These are just the way that polar opposites work. These are used as terminologies. They're not being used as descriptors.
Slow and fast. So now let's take a look at this mysterious symbol. What exactly does it mean? It's often depicted in movies, TV shows, books, magazines, or even tattoos, but it's often being misunderstood. So what exactly does this mean? You can call this symbol the symbol of yin and yang. However, it does have a formal name, and it's called the Tai Chi symbol, or the Tai Chi symbol. So what does Tai Chi mean? First of all, you have to understand the Chinese characters of the word Tai Chi. The word Tai can be separated into 2 words. While this
So I made a video that a while back, maybe like 4 years ago, that almost went viral, and I'm glad it didn't. I actually had to put a stop to it, where I was doing Tai Chi, or what's sometimes called meditative martial arts, not the dance Tai Chi that's done by American and Western practitioners, but just the art of meditative martial arts, which is moving slow, using real moves, concentrating where you're doing it. Some people will actually call it Korean Tai Chi, because it's more related to Taekwondo than it is to like Kung Fu. Even though Kung Fu is also another word that's really badly misused and mistranslated. Kung Fu just means great skill. It doesn't mean a martial art. But yeah, so I just think it's funny how that works. How the Western idea of what these words mean are very different than the way these words are used in the religions where they come from, and these are religious words.
Character means big or large. This means small. And the second word ji means ultimate or utmost. And if you combine the both, it literally means ultimate big and ultimate small. Imagine this. It is ultimate big, that there's nothing outside of it. How big is it? And imagine if it is ultimate small, that there's nothing that consists inside of it.
This is another thing where if you're just looking at the surface level, it becomes really interesting how it parallels with Christianity, because Christianity also deals with paradoxes and mystery. And so this again is another place where if you're looking at the surface, it looks like Christianity and Taoism meet and mix really well. But again, they don't. It just looks that way. It seems that way.
How small is it? In other words, it consists of everything. Therefore, some people translate Tai Chi as the supreme ultimate. Tai Chi is a symbol that encloses everything in the universe.
So it was in studying and meditating on the supreme ultimate that I came up with the idea of ultimate reality. And because meditative practices is a very isolated practice, it's a very by yourself thing, I felt like an idiot when I started reading more and more philosophy books and more theology, and I saw that other great thinkers had already come up with the idea of ultimate reality long before I did. But this is where I developed the idea through meditation, through meditating on this idea.
Now let's take a look at the symbol itself. So why is the symbol circular in shape? Why isn't it a triangle? Why isn't it a square? Well, there's a couple of reasons. First of all, circle means all. Because Tai Chi represents everything in the universe, and circle is what.
And that's how it kind of relates to the practice of pancreation, because pancreation is all strength. So even though I was teaching a Greek martial art, because everybody in America, when they do martial arts, they start off with karate and taekwondo. So you just kind of end up putting them together. And hey, Thomas. And it ends up fitting really well with almost any martial arts teaching. So Tai Chi is just really useful as a real useful utility, a real useful tool in teaching any kind of martial arts.
What that encloses it. So Tai Chi uses a circle symbol. Secondly, circle represents constant changes. As you might have heard, the only constant in the universe is change. Thirdly, the circle represents cycle. Everything in the universe has a cycle. For example, day and night. The sun rises, the sun sets, the sun rises again, and the sun sets.
Thomas, I don't know if you noticed, I'm using the different camera, and I just look so white. I have a nice little tan going on, and right now I just look like the whitest man in the universe. I really hate this camera. It's my backup.
Again. Also the seasons as well. Spring, summer, autumn, winter. And it goes back to spring again. Actually, life itself is a cycle.
You know, I remember when I was in college and I was studying, you just keep on studying the stuff you love. So I was studying this kind of secular nature idea. And me and a professor were trying to figure out, well, what were the months and what were the calendar days and how did the cycle work in ancient times, like pre-Roman calendar. And it was really hard to find information, but it seems like no matter where we went, it was always broken up into 4 months, sometimes five. Uh, then and the seasons were like more important than the individual months. So you had 12 months, you had 360 days, 350 days. So everybody kind of came up with the same conclusion, which is kind of cool. In the ancient world, everyone kind of figured all this stuff out.
Cool. So what else can the Taiji symbol teach us? The black represents the yin. The white represents the yang. You can see that yin
It's just interesting that 360 degrees ends up being a universal.
and yang are interdependent on each other. They cannot exist without each other. Without up, there is no down. Without front, there is no back. Both are equally important, and no one is more important than the other. Also,
And again, this is why Taoism ends up becoming incompatible with Christianity, and even with Judaism, is because you make the argument that you need evil for there to be good, you need good for there to be evil, you need both halves. The Christian argument is not that. The Christian argument is that good can exist without evil, but evil can't exist without good. So it is a fundamentally different theology, and that's important to note. And again, I don't know if there's any actual physical scientific basis that if you're a good person, you need to do some wickedness to have a balanced mentality, or if you're a really bad person, you have to do some good to have a balanced life. It's a good theory when you're studying Taoism, but I don't know if that's applicable in real life or healthy.
you can see there's a black dot within the white and a white dot within the black. This means there is no pure yin or pure yang. Both carries the seed of one another. There is always yin within yang and yang within yin. And when yang reaches its peak, it transforms into yin. And when yin reaches its peak, it transforms into yang.
So another symbol that you'll see associated with Taoism is the infinity eight, and that's because if you go far enough in one direction, you come back the other way. And this ends up becoming a useful tool for when you're practicing skills play or weapons play. So you'll do your katas or your schemas with your weapons in a figure eight motion, because it helps you do the martial art from when you're attacking. So this is swinging down to the head, coming down, swinging back down the other way. And then if you go the other direction, hitting to the ribs, coming up to the head, hitting to the ribs, coming up to the head. So it's just interesting how well that works. I figure it's because East Asian martial arts developed with the Tao.
And this happens in every phenomenon. For example, you all use the day and night as well. The daytime, when it reaches its peak, the sun sets and the night occurs. And when the night reaches its peak, the sun rises and it's daytime. So how can we apply the concept of yin and yang? Chinese people has been applying the yin and yang theory in terms of military, politics, philosophy,
And that's what I was just saying, exactly what he's saying.
science, etc. However, today, because my channel is all about Chinese medicine, so let's talk about how yin and yang can be applied into the field of Chinese medicine. In one word, the key to longevity.
It's funny. I don't believe in junk medicine. I used to take supplements, and I just kind of figure all of it's junk, so I don't do supplements anymore. But my wife is Chinese, for those that don't know, and she, whenever I get sick, she'll give me Chinese medicine. She doesn't want to go to Tylenol. She doesn't want to use Robitussin or Pepto-Bismol. No, it's going to be these little pills, and the pills react to hot and cold. I'm a Catholic, blessed be, but I married a Chinese woman. I've lived in China very briefly, and I've been a martial artist since I was. I mean, I guess I was 6 years old when I got put in my first martial arts class. And in martial arts, you get a lot of Taoism in there. Anyway, as I was saying, so when you get sick, the medication is based on hot and cold. So if you have a hot disease, you're going to take a medication that's supposed to lower the internal fire. And if you have a cold disease, you have to take a medication that's going to raise the internal fire. And by raising it means drying you out. So the medication does work, but not because of the mysticalism. It just severely dries out your nostrils. So if you got like a cold or got drainage, like you just it'll just dry it out so you don't have any gunk. Um, so I guess it kind of works. It's kind of real.
Longevity is the balance of yin and yang. In a healthy body, the yin and yang is in a constant state of dynamic equilibrium. That means that it is within the range, the normal range. Take body temperature for example. If your body temperature is around 37 degrees Celsius, it doesn't matter if it's 36.9 or 30.
Well, I believe in Jesus Christ, not the Catholic Jesus, but just Jesus in general. I believe that he's God. I don't know if you're I don't know if you're a Taoist or if you're a Christian coming in from one of my other feeds, but yeah.
7.1, it's still considered normal. However, if there is a break of the balance, let's suppose your body temperature reaches 38.5 degrees, then that is of a concern. And we have to regain the balance and rebalancing the yin and yang.
And
Therefore,
I don't want to sound like I'm trashing Chinese medicine completely, because when I was practicing martial arts, I would use the Greek ideas on how to heal an injury. And you can actually see this a lot in modern Thai boxing. So you use a hard stick to get rid of a bruise. You'll use a wrapping with some kind of ointment to heal an internal injury faster. And these do seem to work, at least anecdotally.
Chinese medicine doctors often diagnose patients using the theory of yin and yang. If the yin and yang is out of balance, we will try our best to regain its balance. And there are 4 basic imbalances of yin and yang: excess in yang, excess in yin, deficiency in yang, and deficiency in yin. Excess in yang causes heat. Typical symptoms include high fever, thirst, and dark urine. We need to decrease the yang level to regain its balance.
I think it's really interesting that my wife knows this stuff like the back of her hand, but she's an atheist, and she's very scientific in her thinking, very numbers orientated. She's an accountant, but she knows this stuff like the back of her hand. She can diagnose based on these principles. And I remember one time asking her, I was like, "Were you ever a Taoist?" And she's like, "No, I think that stuff's crap." But I'm like, "But you know the Chinese medicine stuff?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm Chinese." I was like, "Okay, you're Chinese. I'm sorry."
Excess in yin leads to cold patterns such as cold limbs. And to balance that out, we need to decrease the yin level. Now, when there's a deficiency in yin, there are heat symptoms as well, such as low-grade fever, night sweats, feverish sensations in the palms, soles, and chest. However, if you decrease the level of yang, this will lead to deficiency in both yin and yang. Therefore, the correct way is
That is an interesting concept in Taoism, where you can actually be less spiritual by being less human. So it's not as if being balanced simply means you're okay. Even if you're balanced, but you're balanced at a low level, that's not good. And if you're balanced at a high level, it's not good. Uh, I think one leads to chaos and the other one leads to death. So I always found it really hard to reconcile this way of thinking with scientific thinking. So in scientific thinking, perfect homeostasis, perfect balance means death. And in yin and yang, perfect balance means life. So when you're a Taoist, you're trying to reach perfect balance, which in Western idea would be death. So it's kind of interesting that it's the opposite in these two cultures because of our scientism. I have no idea how that reflects on how Jesus thought of things. We have a question in the chat. What's going on? I believe his light, I guess he's talking about Jesus. I believe Jesus' light and life is within us. His kingdom is within. He showed us the way, but most of us have forgotten. He is talking about a bipolar universe, nothing new. Jesus taught about this. Well, what's interesting is that Taoism's way older than Christianity, like thousands of years older. It's about 1,000 years older than Judaism. So, just something to think about.
Is to increase the yin in order to regain the balance. Lastly, a deficiency in yang causes coat-like patterns such as coat limbs, and the correct way is to increase the yang to regain the balance. Therefore, it is really crucial for Chinese medicine doctors to distinguish and diagnose which type of imbalances the patient has and to treat them accordingly. Although yin and yang
It's kind of funny. My wife has a little apothecary. Instead of having Tylenol and aspirin in her medicine cabinet, she has a little apothecary in her cabinet. All right, let's go to the next video. This guy's talking super slow and super boring. Let's go over here. That's TED Talk.
Let me show you how we do stuff around.
Hopefully, some of these guys will be more, have more energy in a second. Be more energetic. Go on, get past copyrighted music.
You might have seen this symbol before, whether it's as a temporary tattoo or at a Chinese temple. It's called the yin-yang symbol. It comes from Taoism, a religion born in China, and it has far more meaning than you probably realize. The yin is the dark swirl and the yang is the light one, and each side has a dot of the opposite color, which gives a clue to the meaning of yin and yang. Everything contains the seed of its opposite.
I don't know if it's pseudoscience because I don't even think they're claiming it to be science. I used to think the same thing. I used to think this is just junk science. I used to take supplements and I used to believe in supplements until I became diabetic and I was like, oh, these things aren't helping me. They're hurting my kidneys. They're hurting my liver. I think supplements are pseudoscience, but a lot of supplementation is based on Chinese medicine. So you'll get people who like homeopathic remedies. They'll get into supplementation, and they'll be looking at stuff like Chinese medicine. What's interesting is that now with the availability of genetic testing, you have, and I know some people who are doing this, and I feel bad for them, but I'm not going to yell at them or anything. They're using genetics to decide what supplements they need, and I'm like, that's not how that works. Your genetics don't change with what you eat or how you exercise. You know, that's just mutation, adaptation, mutation. That's just evolution, man. The actual thing you need is a regular blood work so you can see if you're deficient in any of your nutrients, and if you're not, you don't need any supplements. And if you are, you don't need 100 supplements. You just need that one that you're deficient in, or just go eat the food that contains that thing that you need. Yeah.
Darth Vader has the seed of goodness, and Luke has the potential to follow his father to the dark side. Like Luke and his father, yin and yang are not total opposites. They are relative to each other. Taoists believe that the universe is made up of energies, vibrations, and matter which behave differently in different contexts.
Let me
Something can be yin or yang depending on lots of things.
Okay. So Blessed B has laid some fighting words in the chat. He says, even martial arts is fake. Get into a fight with an MMA guy. They will destroy the martial artist. Not true. I am a martial artist, and I am also I'm an ex-underground fighter. I never made it big. I don't want to make it sound like I'm like a professional fighter, but I fought. I started. I think my first semi-pro fight. I was 15. It was a thing called Fighting in the Park. It was with the local ROTC, and it was just one. It was like maybe 8 guys total, and I was only in one fight in that. But I bloodied the guy up, and I won. Which is cool. That was a cool debut. But martial arts, there are fake martial arts out there. I'm not going to say there's not. There's a lot of, especially with in Chinese martial arts, there's a lot of woo and a lot of stuff. But a lot of the principles are real. So I've used karate, tai chi, and taekwondo in real fights and have won fights using those techniques. Yes, pairing it with pancration, which is more like MMA. But these principles do work on their own. They're not bad principles. Just you got to practice the techniques like you're actually fighting, not like you're dancing. And a lot of the martial arts is dancing. Even a schema, if you're going with a more traditional MMA or European martial art. Yeah. Okay.
So while wheat that's growing is yang, when it's being reaped, it's yin. A wave's crest is yang, and the trough is yin. Villages on the sunny side of a valley in China have names like Luoyang or Shiyang. But on the shady side, for example, of the Yangtze River Valley, there's Jiang Yin. The brake is yin to the gas pedal's yang. An eggshell is yang, the egg inside is yin. You think you're getting it? Yang is harder, stronger, brighter, and faster, but one can turn into the other, or are two sides of the same coin. The sunbeams are yang in comparison to the shadows. The pitch is yang, the catch is yin. The yang starts an action and the yin receives it, completes it. Yin is the inside space of a cup. It wouldn't be a cup without it. Yang is the cup. The coffee's heat, however, is yang, and its blackness is yin. Yang goes berserk sometimes, but there's some very powerful yins too, if they don't quite.
Okay, so I adjusted the sound settings as much as I can. It looks like it's not going to let me adjust it up. I had the settings tied into a different camera, and that camera died yesterday. So the sound setting is a little off. So I'm just going to put the mic next to me. Hopefully that sounds a little bit better. Where are we at? Do you think those guys that can knock out someone without touching? No. That's chi like that doesn't work like that. Those guys are just con artists. Do you believe in chi? Well, I mean, asking if I believe in chi is like asking, do I believe in the soul? I do believe in the soul. So in a way, I believe in chi. Do I believe in chi as it's presented in Dragon Ball Z? No, I don't. Nor do I believe in chi in the way that it's presented in Street Fighter. While it's cool, I don't think that's real. But do I believe there's an internal energy you can focus? Yes, most definitely. Like I said, the principles are good. But having good principles doesn't mean that they extend beyond the limitations of reality.
Might go berserk. Yin is the darker swirl, the female, but there is a white dot in it. And yang is the lighter, the male, but it has a black dot. Water flowing calmly in a river is yin, but when it goes over the waterfall, it's very yang. Toothpicks are yin.
So that's actually a very interesting thing when you actually take these and apply it to different martial arts. So in the Book of Five Rings, it talks about water, but water isn't simply water. Water isn't just the river flowing, and it isn't just the lake. So stillness and rushing. But if you're out of order, if you're chaotic, then you're the typhoon, then you're the storm. So you have to have different levels of control, and this is a great way to understand how to control your sword or whatever weapon you're using. So I got into kendo because of this. I got into kendo, and I've been practicing kendo and even aikido for a very long time now. I'm not good at it at all. I've tried a few times to do real kendo. I have to boken and everything like that. I'm terrible at it. I would die in a sword fight, in a real sword fight. But I love practicing the principles. I actually get the updated rule list for how to do your I'm going to call it a kata, but how to do your practicing your lines for kendo. And I practice it. I try to practice it every morning if I can, because there's this every morning in Japan, all the business people, before they go to work, they go down to the basement of their building and they practice kendo with each other. I just think that's an awesome way to start your day. Let's see. Okay, more questions. Do Christians have chi energy, and where does it come from? So, chi, in an actual sense, is just your concentration and your willpower. But chi is soul. It's breath. You're breathing. So, just like how in the Greek understanding of soul, pneuma is breathing. So it's just controlling your breath and controlling where you focus your energy. And this works really well in martial arts. It also works really well in concentration if you're at work. So let's say you're having a bad day at work, you just kind of zone out, do a little meditation, get back into it, and you'll do better. Thank you for subbing, my friend. So is the male yang or the female? He just explained it in there. I haven't been practicing Taoism since I converted into Christianity, which was almost 10 years ago now. So I don't practice this as a philosophical religion anymore. So yeah.
Compared with a telephone pole.
And we're going to be doing Buddhism in a week or two. I don't know when Buddhism's coming up on my menu. I have a menu of videos, of topics we're covering. But when we do Buddhism, I have very little experience with that. I've dated 2 Buddhists, and my mother-in-law's a Buddhist, and my stepson's a Buddhist. But I don't have any experience with Buddhism. I've been to like 4 Buddhist temples in my entire life, all of them in China. I have very little knowledge of Buddhism outside of, we're going to watch a video on it and I'll comment on it.
The back of a person is more yang than the front. The top of the person is the yang end.
Yeah, see, that's important to note with Taoism. So when Taoism says that, male and female, it doesn't mean that the female is bad and the male is good. Within the human body itself, you have yin and yang symbols. You have polarities to your body, to the way that you act. And in Japan, again, I'm more familiar with the Japanese understanding because of martial arts. In Japan, they take it super seriously. So if they give you a blood test and they see that your energy, they give you a blood test before you start working, and they'll check your energy levels. And on days when they know you're going to have low energy, they won't let you come into work because they think that that's going to be the day you're going to mess up. These are Fortune 500 companies. These are big companies that take this super seriously. And on days that are high energy, that's when you'll have your presentations with Westerners and stuff like that, which is like, it's based on blood work, based on the theory of chi. It's just crazy. It's just crazy how serious they take this in Eastern culture.
Taoism teaches that there is a power in the universe. It's higher, deeper, and truer than any other force.
So Blessed Bee says, I don't even think Buddha existed. The story is just a metaphor for giving up the fake life and the experience, the real. So the original Buddha, because there's reincarnation in Buddhism, probably didn't exist. The dude who wrote the first sutras did exist. He's a real dude. He's a real guy. There's historical evidence for him. Whether or not he was actually a prince and a king before he became destitute, I don't know if that's true. I don't think there's any records of him being a king, as far as I know, or an emperor, the prince's son. But there is a dude. There's like a real dude who's inspiring all of this. But it's not the first Buddha. It's like the 3rd incarnation or something like that. And also Buddha. So Buddha is a Hindu thing, but it becomes a Chinese thing. So you see a very different depiction of Buddha in China, and then you see a very different depiction in Japan. And then there's another depiction that's not Buddha, that in the West. So the big smiley fat guy, the smiling Buddha, that's not Buddha. That has nothing to do with Buddhism. And then you'll usually see a Buddhist, a little Buddhist dude, a little Buddha, right next to the Tao. Some kind of Taoism thing. And usually with the Tao symbol, when it's religious, it's not just the yin and yang. So when it's yin and yang by itself, that's more philosophical. Okay? When it's a yin and yang with all the little symbols around it, that's someone who's actually practicing the religion. So there's Taoism as religion and there's Taoism as philosophy. And I was more into the Taoism as philosophy thing. The question: do you see a parallel between Buddhism and Plato's? Yeah. Well, let me finish what I was saying about it first, and I'll answer that one. It's a good question. So, what's funny about Buddha not existing is that Lao Tzu and Sun Tzu are also mythical characters. So when you, from the West, when you're looking at Eastern religion, you think, oh, hey, there was a guy named Sun Tzu, there was a guy named Lao Tzu. Move on. They wrote some papers. The entire life story of these people are completely made up. We don't know if they existed. So with Lao Tzu, the difference between Sun Tzu and Lao Tzu. So Sun Tzu is like military and like masculine. Lao Tzu is feminine. So he starts an order of, now there would be Taoist nuns. I don't know what, there were nuns before there was Taoism, so I don't know what religion they were. And he taught them Tai Chi to protect themselves, and Kung Fu, I believe. Tai Chi and Kung Fu to protect themselves in fighting. I believe it's Wushu. And it's a feminine martial arts form that these nuns learn because the emperor didn't believe what Lao Tzu was saying. So he's like, I'm not going to give you my military guys. I'll give you these female nuns, warrior nuns. If you can teach them how to fight, then we'll get into it. It's a great story, complete fiction, but fun. And I think that order of nuns, it eventually became a real thing because this was a religion. So eventually people actually started doing it. Okay, now the next question was, do you see parallels between Buddhism and Plato's Cave? Yes and no. I think Plato's Cave is so rich in its philosophy that it influences things like Christianity and Buddhism. So not that Jesus read Plato, but that the people who were interpreting the Gospels had read Plato. And because this is a highly literate religion, it's a religion of the book, so you need people who know how to read Koine Greek and know how to read Latin. So they would have read Plato and they would have then read Jesus, and then through reading the Gospels, they would have incorporated and infused Platonism and Aristotelianism into Christianity, which is what happened. And so I think we're so indoctrinated into a Judeo-Christian society that we don't realize that we're actually indoctrinated into an Hellenistic society and a Romanistic society. And so when we see things like Buddhism and we see things like Taoism, we can't help but insert Christianese and insert Hellenistic ideas of scientism and philosophy into these Western ideas that have nothing to do with anything else. All right, talk to you later, my friend. All right, let's keep going.
They call it the Tao. It means the way. Like the Force in Star Wars, the Tao has...
So the way, there's only one true way, which is, again, another parallel with Christianity. So again, on a surface level, it really meshes together well. It's only when you get into the details that it starts to contradict each other. So Jesus is the one true way, and Taoism wants you to follow the one true way, the one true path. So you can see how it sounds like it should match, you know. But again, these are completely different cultures, completely different time periods. They have nothing to do with each other. But the coexist people will try to say that they do, but they really don't.
two sides, unlike other religions where the higher power is all good and perhaps has an all evil rival. Taoism teaches that we need to learn from both yin and yang. And unlike religions with gods that are personal, the higher power in Taoism is not.
So that's one of the funny things when I started debating atheists, is that I had been in Taoism for so long that I was surprised at their offense that God would order the murder or the annihilation of the Canaanites or the sacrifice of someone, you know. Because in Taoism, you need both in every character. For a character to be truly holy, truly good, you need a little bit of darkness. You need some shadow in there. So these kind of things would be understood as, well, that is what a divine being would ask you to do. And you look at things like ancient culture, like the Greek and Hellenistic cultures that Christianity is drawing from, later Christianity development. I'm not talking about the actual Christ. So when you're pulling from these cultures where their deities did what we would consider terrible things, no culture that's looking at these texts is freaked out by it. It's only in our modern context that suddenly, when we see slavery in the Bible, or we see murder in the Bible, or warfare in the Bible, that we get shocked. But that's not the perspective of the ancient world. The ancient world is like, these things just are. You have to accept them. And if you can't accept them, you're not living in reality. Kind of ironic, right?
Taoists believe that living in harmony with the way, a person will not have to fight against the universe's natural flow. So, for example, listen more, argue less.
So this kind of goes with the Christian idea of everything has its own season. So, yeah. Again, there's a lot of good parallels with Christianity and even Judaism. Well, more Christianity, with Christianity and Taoism. I really wish they were compatible. Unfortunately, the church fathers make it very clear that you cannot insert this kind of naturalistic ideas into the Christian dogma and Christian faith.
Be ready to back up or undo something, and you will make even faster progress. Don't worry about being the best. Be who you are. Live simply. Complications take you away from the Tao.
And I feel like a lot of modernism, postmodern thought, especially secular thought, they think they're being clever and psychological, but they're actually just pulling Eastern philosophy and they're applying a Judeo-Christian ethos onto Eastern philosophy, and they're saying, well, that's all you need. All you got to do is be a good person. All you got to do is just do what's right and just go with the flow. Those aren't Christian ideas. That's not Christianity. You're getting that from Eastern religions.
The wise person is flexible, Taoists say. Learning to use the Tao is what Taoism is all about. And that's why you should know your yin from your yang.
Stop that sound. All right, let's go to the next. Let's see. Here we go. Here's a little bit of Christianese. This is going to be how Taoism led this man to become a Catholic. If it's all music, I'm not going to be able to use it.
I thought that believing in him was the same.
Okay, there we go.
I didn't always believe in Jesus.
Dan Tarrant.
For a while, I didn't believe in Jesus because I thought that believing in him meant condemning everybody else. And then for a while, I thought that believing in him was the same as believing in everyone else. It turned
So not exactly the same. So the reason why I left the church at 13 was because I was being brutally picked on. For one thing, I was very skinny, very feminine, and I was also very weird. I liked ghosts and zombies and vampires, and I had a dead sibling and I had a dead mom. So all that kind of like made me different. So I left because the people who were being jerks were the Christians, and the people who were being cool and accepting were the atheists. And the cool esoteric, people who were into like the weird stuff I was into, the goths and all that, and the punks. And then I didn't have a problem, because I always believed in God. I didn't have a problem exploring different religions. And when I got into Taoism, it just made sense to me. Like, oh, I see the parallels here. I'm fine. So this guy's kind of talking my language right now.
Turns out that I was wrong on both accounts.
Agreed. Turns out I was wrong on both accounts. Hence, I came back to the church and became Catholic again. Or what is it? Reverted.
Turns out that following Jesus is not like following anybody else. And yet, it turns out that following Jesus does not mean condemning everybody else. We're here at the Franciscan.
That was a very important lesson for me to learn. Right now, if you're following my Twitter at all, you know that I'm kind of having a back and forth with Melanie Mack because she thinks condemning people is the Christian way to go. That is not Christianity. Christianity is not about condemnation. It's about forgiveness and reconciliation. So the whole message of the gospel is that God forgave you for your sins. Now, change your ways and follow me. Follow Jesus. So it isn't just accepting that God forgave you. It's also changing your ways and following him. But notice there's no condemnation in there. We're not allowed to judge. God judges. Our job is to spread the word. Hey, good news. God forgave you. God loves you. Whoever you're angry at, you need to forgive. And if you're angry at yourself, you need to forgive them also. You need to love your enemy, which means forgiving and being merciful to them and helping them. You need to love your neighbor, which means respecting them. You need to love yourself, which means being disciplined. And above all, you need to love God. You need to have one standard. That is the shekel in the sanctuary. You cannot have another standard. There is no other God but God. And if you're going to submit to his will, that's the will you have to submit to, which includes following God's commandments. And all of the commandments, all 300 and something commandments, can be summarized in Jesus's reworking of those commandments, which is love your enemy, love your neighbor, love yourself, and love God above all. And just to be clear, for those that don't know, I'm adding in the love yourself part. So usually the wording is love your enemy, love your neighbor, and love God above all. That's it. So Melanie Mack is messing up her message, the Christian message, when she's insulting people and hurting people and trying to be an edgelord. That is not the right way. That is not the path. Jesus would go and help the person, and through his example, bring them to himself.
Monastery of St. Clair.
Mockery is not
and I'm
healthy.
so excited to share this place with you because in many ways this place represents both the beginning and the end of my journey to Jesus Christ. Altar, you can see God's created world, which for me was always a bedrock in my relationship with God. No matter where I was in my understanding of God, I could always sense the presence of God through his created world. And for a long time, when I was confused about Jesus Christ and about what I believed about God, I knew that I could always go into the presence of God just by sitting with him quietly in his creation. And so it's beautiful to me here at this monastery to be able to see God's creation right behind the altar.
So same thing for me. When I used to meditate, I loved meditating outside. My favorite places to meditate was the beach. I still have a Jeep, but it doesn't really run anymore. Was to go to the Jeep with the top off, go to the farthest point where there were no people, and just meditate there. I loved meditating at midnight. A midnight meditation always was awesome. And I'd go outside, go into the grass. Also, a morning meditation is really great because you'd go out in the morning and lay down in the grass and just be one with the earth. That translates really well into the Liturgy of the Hours. So my meditative practice became a religious praying practice. So instead of meditating on myself, I started praying and contemplating God. Praying to God and contemplating God. And through prayer and through the liturgy, I learned that prayer is not about asking. but it's about giving thanks. So my prayers turn from me asking things to me being grateful for things. And then in the morning, you would do what's called intercession. So there you're asking in general sense, not just for yourself, but for the whole church. And then in the end of the day, that's when you do your contemplation, you do your thanking to God again, and you also do your, hey, this is where I messed up in the day. You do your self-reflection in that way. And so it really matched up well with the practice I was already doing through Taoism. And so it translated perfectly and got me out of the Taoist practices.
And it's on that altar that God gives us his Son, Jesus Christ, in the bread and the wine of the Eucharist, in the real presence of the Eucharist. And so this...
And real presence, that's something we should talk about, transubstantiation. So when people start, like happened in my video earlier, when people start talking badly about qi and stuff like that, understand, qi is soul, qi is breath, qi is nume, so psyche, your breath. So you're, just like Catholics understand and Christians understand soul, the same word is going to translate into qi, into the internal energy. Just as with all of these things, like transubstantiation. So they believe in medicine through herbs, some of which actually becomes real medicine. Like it actually, some of them ends up having like a little bit of aspirin or something in there, it naturally. So we believe in healing through prayer, that someone can be healed through prayer. We believe in praying for the dead. We believe that the actual bread and wine becomes the actual blood and body of Christ. These are very Christian, very Catholic ideas that not even all Christians accept, let alone people from the outside. And people outside looking in are going to look at our beliefs as very weird and very strange and very like, how can that even be? So don't go throwing stones at these false beliefs. Point out the illogicalness of it. That's fine. But just remember that we have beliefs that they look at as illogical.
Altar and what's behind the altar represents kind of where I was in my relationship with God and then kind of where it took me. For a long time, I couldn't trust the New Testament scriptures. I wasn't sure if I believed in miracles.
So I didn't have any problem with the New Testament scriptures. I never had a problem with miracles. It was when, I'll answer that in a second, my friend. It was when I got to Paul for the third time. It was the third time reading the Bible all the way through, and his misogyny and his apparent misogyny and his apparent anti-Semitism. I just today got done reading The Origin of Satan, listening to The Origin of Satan on Myth Vision with Dr. Pagel or Peggy or something like that. And the apparent anti-Semitism in the New Testament, especially Paul's understanding of things, not just pseudo-Paul, but actual Paul's writings, turned her away from the religion. She thought the anti-Semitism was very too high and very un-Christian-like, and that's how she got into Gnosticism. She sounds to me like a Gnostic, not like a Christian, just to be FYI. But that's important to understand those kind of things. Now, we do have a question in the chat. Here we go. Why do you eat blood when God commanded his people not to eat blood of any living thing in Leviticus? So first off, Old Covenant, New Covenant. Secondly, because Jesus told us to do so. Jesus said, if you do not eat my body and drink my blood, you have no life in you. So we do it. Also, body and blood, essence and energies. Essence and energies distinction is a Orthodox idea, not a Catholic idea, just FYI. But while the substance becomes body and blood, the accidents do not. So you're still looking at bread, you're still looking at wine. You're not actually drinking physical human blood. You're drinking and partaking in the divine essence, which completely subsumes, I think that's the right word, the bread and the wine. So it is true body and true. It is both true body and true bread. It is both true wine and true blood. I got that one right this time.
I wasn't sure if I believed in Jesus. Frankly, I think I struggled in my beliefs about Jesus because I wasn't struggling with Jesus himself. I was struggling with the ideas about Jesus that other people had kind of given me. It turns out that many of those ideas were wrong and unbiblical and un-Catholic. It was years later, after hearing some of these ideas, that I actually went back and read the New Testament.
True blood and true body.
Myself, and sought Jesus Christ in a personal relationship with God myself. But I wasn't ready to do that at the very beginning. And so for a time...
Hey, BS, if you can let me know, was that really Dr. Kip who gave me a chewing out on my channel, or was that you as one of your bots, as one of your alts? Because you've already fooled me once before with that Rachel Steffens, I want to say. So yeah, I'm just curious if that was really Dr. Kip getting angry at his commentary. True Blood is a vampire show. It is. It's also a werewolf show and a witch show. And also, I have the first 3 novels of Charlene's series. I never finished it because I wanted to read other stuff, and it was taking... But they were good. The Dallas vampire thing, it was good. It wasn't terrible like the show.
I just sat with God in his created world and listened.
Scouts on it.
And believe it or not, it was many of the other faiths of the world that became safe harbors for me in my personal relationship with God. You see, there's one thing you have to know.
And that happened to me as well. I forgot the guy's name already. Studying these other religions, even though I didn't buy into them, and even though I thought their books were complete mythologies or interpretations of real events. So there's a verisimilitude of a real event that's recorded in the historicity of whatever you're reading. I found in reading those things comfort. So I still kept my belief in God while reading other religions. It is not like I read something, even secular works, that none of those things turned me away from believing in God. They just made me believe more, until eventually I came back to the Bible with a more open mind, and I started trying to figure out how things could be true after I read an encyclical. I don't even know how I got an encyclical at this time. This is pre-modern internet, from Pope, who was it at the time? Was it Benedict? Explaining how the Old Testament is polemic, and how each book, and this is the 5 ways, I actually printed out for you guys. I was going to put it up here on the wall. The 5 methods of interpreting the Bible. He's like, hey, this is not all literal. And I'm like, what? The Pope just said what? And that made me start investigating the Bible more. That's why I went back to the Bible the first time I finished it. It's because of that. Because I was like, oh, wait, let me try reading it the way that the Pope is saying to reading it, to not take it literally. And suddenly, everything started making sense, because I had already read all this other philosophy and all this other non-literal metaphysical explanations in Eastern religion, where I was like, oh, I know what this is talking about. Oh, I know what this is talking about. And the connection started being made.
About me. God didn't lead me away from the other world religions into a relationship with Jesus Christ. God led me through the other world religions into a relationship with Jesus Christ.
Correct.
For a long time, the only scriptures that I could really trust and hold on to and that could lead me to God were the Tao Te Ching, which were...
So I'm gonna talk about the Tao Te Ching in a second, but I gotta say on Paul, finding out that there were pseudo-Pauline letters made being Christian way more easy. Not that the other letters are less authoritative, not that they're not inspired, but it wasn't how the Bible was made. It was one of Bart Ehrman's courses, and then there was a Yale course and I want to say it was a New Mexico course on the same topic. So I would do 3 different professors at one time. I didn't want to just get one professor's point of view. So whenever I did these online things like Great Courses Plus or whatever, the iTunes U, whatever the other ones were, I would I would pick 3 different professors from 3 different universities talking about the same thing. That way I didn't just get one perspective. And seeing that the consensus was that the pseudo-Pauline letters are not Paul himself, but someone later trying to interpret or explain a situation that they were in through Paul, made accepting these letters way easier. I was like, oh, okay. So Paul's not actually being anti-Semitic. A later group who's having a problem with the Jewish people after the synagogue Jewish split, and they're trying to differentiate each other from that group, and they're also trying to keep people from joining the Judaizers. Oh, that makes sense. Okay, I'm good. Then I can keep reading this, and it's not going to affect my faith at all. That's how that happened for me. Tao Te Ching time. All right, let's keep going.
Written by Lao Tzu, a historical person who lived about 500 BC.
Historical.
Lao Tzu had this experience of God. He said that there was this thing called the Tao, and he could see that everything in the created world came from it, and everything in the created world would return to it.
Yeah, and in reading the Tao, especially coming from a Western Judo-Christian mindset, I couldn't help but vision Jesus. Every single time I would read it, I was like, this sounds like it's talking about Jesus. So it was actually kind of cool.
And then if you wanted to live at peace...
It wasn't talking about Jesus, by the way, just FYI. I'm just saying, when I was learning it, I couldn't help but make those connections.
Within this created world, you needed to live at peace and in harmony with this thing called the Tao. Mm-hmm. He said, in fact, that this thing, this presence, this creator presence, he said he didn't even know what to call it. So he called it the Tao, which means the way.
Darn it. No copyright music, people.
Tao Te Ching. There are no miracles in the book. Lao Tzu doesn't have any visions. He just senses the presence of God.
Yeah, that's the other thing, that if you read more Eastern esoteric writings, the Tao Te Ching not being esoteric, it's very well known. You see that the miracles that atheists are looking for are not there in Eastern religions. There are miracles, there are amazing things that happen, but they're part of the natural world. They're just the exception, or the thing that changes. They're part of the cycle. So again, when coming back to Christianity and reading the Bible all the way through, after reading all of this stuff, the miracles that Jesus performs didn't have any illogical sense to them, because they're part of the flow of the narrative, which is what you learn from reading stuff like the Buddhist sutras, or reading the Atrahasis, or reading whatever that book is right there behind me, the Bhagavad Gita, there you go, or the Upanishads. You start seeing that miracles are actually just part of the natural flow of things. And so there will always be an exception to the rule. There always will be a point of change and possibility. And if you look at the larger history with mathematics, you can actually mathematically find where the exception is going to happen. So things are going to be normal. Here's a weird thing. Things are going to be normal. And once you start figuring that out, it changes the way that you interpret miracles. And it just sounds awesome.
God in the created world, and he realizes that being in that presence of God and being in harmony with it was the only way to have peace in this world. He didn't have any real answers about what happens after you die. He didn't have any visions of Jesus Christ or visions of God at 500 BC, but he knew that God existed.
I think it's interesting that he's placing him at 500 BC. When I was deep into Taoism, I tried to do a thing where I wanted to see where all the major texts were written, and about 4 or 5 different sources all place them around 1000 BC. So you have this really cool thing where you have culture. It's really interesting. So you have culture being one way in all these societies, and then at around between 1000 and 700 BC, in that time frame, you have the Iliad, and you have the the Odyssey. You have Hesiod working days. You have theogony. You have the Buddhist writings happening, including his, because the Buddha has apostles just like Jesus, and his apostles are the ones who write the stories of Buddha. Buddha himself doesn't, and they're the ones that develop his philosophy. You have in China, you have Lao Tzu, and Lao Tzu is the one who's doing this Taoism thing, and then so you go, and then you're going to get Jesus. You got the New Testament happening. You have Sun Tzu happening. You have all this stuff happening again at the same time period. Then you go all the way to 1562 or 1552. You have the Reformation happening in Europe, and you have Muramoto Musashi happening in Japan. And so you have these really, it's really interesting that these revelations and revolutions in human thought are happening at roughly the same time in different cultures, which makes me believe that it's some kind of evolutionary process where when culture and society grows to a certain point, these revolutions happen, these revelations happen. You have, you go from warlord to king, from king to emperor, from emperor to parliament, from parliament to democracy or republic, and it started off as republic or democracy. So it's kind of like it's this weird, cool thing in history, which plays into the Taoist way of thinking of secular nature, instead of the Christian way of thinking of progressive history. So progressive history is a Christian idea, secular nature is a pagan or Taoist idea.
And he knew that being in harmony with God was the only way to have peace. And that's exactly what St. Paul says that God does through his created world in Romans chapter 1. In Romans chapter 1, St. Paul explains that God's presence, his invisible qualities, and his eternal nature are evident by his creation, so that we can draw into the beginning of a relationship with God through his created world. And that's exactly what Lao Tzu did. He began to be drawn into this relationship with God, who he didn't even know how to name, and so he just gave God the name Tao. He said everything came from him, everything goes to him,
and this kind of played into my understanding of the pre-Christians, and a lot of early church fathers believe in these kind of pre-Christians. So this is where limbo comes into play. So there's purgatory, where you get purified before you get into heaven, but there's limbo. Limbo is kind of suppressed as an idea now in the Catholic Church, but the idea is that the good pagans, the good people, shouldn't go to hell, but they can't get to heaven. So where do they go? They go to limbo. Limbo is not a waiting place. The waiting station is purgatory. If you go to purgatory, you're automatically going to go to heaven. It's just you have to go through a process to get there. It's that purifying fire. Limbo is that place just outside of hell where anyone it's Sheol, by the way, anyone who's not a Christian but was a good person goes to limbo. They don't go to hell because you don't send good people to hell. That's where the idea of limbo comes from. So Plato, Socrates, Lao Tzu, because they're good pagans, they would be in limbo, not in hell. Just, if anyone's ever wondered how that worked, that's what that was.
Following him is the only way to live.
And if you ever read Dante's Inferno, that the very first place that where Dante meets his angel, it's in that area. So you go from heaven. She's coming from heaven. He's coming from his vision, and he gets to this area where there's all these great intellectuals. That's limbo. That's before you get into hell. So they're outside of hell. They're before the gates of hell. They're not in hell. They're not in the gates of hell.
Live. Lao Tzu wrote, "The Tao is the wonder of all of creation. It is a treasure for all who are kind. Those who have gone astray, the all-forgiving Tao will not abandon them. Those who have offended the Tao will be forgiven. I do not know its name, and so I call it the Tao." Lao Tzu realized that he was separate from God. Lao Tzu realized that people needed mercy and forgiveness from this God.
Narnia is in the closet, my friend. It's in the wardrobe. Come on, get your stories right. B.S. Lewis asks, where's Narnia?
Lao Tzu realized he needed a relationship with this God who he could not name. And for years in my life, the Tao Te Ching was a
And that actually works really well with the unnamed God from Paul. Again, there's a lot of really good parallels that on the surface level makes it feel and seem like you could be both a Taoist and a Catholic. So when I first started this channel, when I first started talking religion on this channel, I should say, I was trying in my own personal life to integrate Taoism, Stoicism, and Christianity into one thing as a practicing Catholic, and it just didn't work. I had to give up Taoism, which was really hard for me to do. You can be a Stoic and a Catholic. You just can't be a Taoist and a Catholic, which is too bad. You can be a philosophical Taoist, as in you can adapt some of the philosophical ideas, but you can't. But they always are going to have to submit to the Christian ideas, and most of the Christian ideas are going to overrule any Taoist thinking. B.S. Lewis, yes. How did you not know? I thought you knew this. I thought that's why you were watching my channel.
bedrock for me. It was a safe harbor for my soul in my relationship with God.
By the way, I know we're only going to go for 30 more minutes, but I got to bring this up. The amount of hate comments I am getting on Twitter for correcting Melanie Mack for using the F slur against people and telling her that's unchristian. I got just rows and rows and rows of people just commenting on that. It's fine. I think it's funny. Yeah. Christian hate is not dead, unfortunately. They are preaching a false gospel.
God. And it's through the Tao Te Ching that God led me to Jesus Christ. It was through the process of beginning to...
And I feel the same way that this guy feels, by the way, that I feel that studying the Tao Te Ching, led me back to Christianity and led me specifically back to Jesus Christ. Because through Taoism, I had already accepted Jesus Christ as the way, as the Lord. So I didn't have any problems calling him God. Intellectually, personally, spiritually, I had no problems. And part of that was the structures built in my brain through reading the Tao Te Ching over and over and over again every single year. He was a ready fit. And that's why I don't get upset about Christianity, for those wondering, because the Dr. Kip, whether fictional or real, on my channel when he was getting upset about my understanding of the Bible. That's why I don't have a problem with Christians recontextualizing Old Testament statements into pointing to Christ, because if you're going to go from Taoism to Christianity, you're doing the exact same thing. You're taking these very Taoist, very Chinese ideas that have nothing to do with Western Christianity, have nothing to do with Judaism, and you're saying, hey, that matches what the Bible says about Jesus. Hey, that matches what the Bible says about Jesus. So when the writers are writing what they are writing in the New Testament, that was just a redundant sentence, they're doing the same thing. They're saying, hey, look, this passage here fits really well with what we're teaching about Jesus. Yeah, they might not have meant that about Jesus, but if you're inspired by the Spirit and you're reading it through the right lens, and this is totally about Jesus. Look at how perfectly it fits what happened to him and what's happening over here. You see what I'm saying? That's what they're doing. So I had no problem with that because I had already done that with Taoism.
To understand a relationship with God through his created world, echoed in the Tao Te Ching, that I eventually found Jesus Christ and found Jesus Christ's real presence on the altar in the Eucharist. You see, God really didn't lead me away from the world religions and away from the Tao Te Ching to discover Jesus Christ. God led me through the Tao Te Ching and through all of the Eastern religions into a relationship.
In versus through is another very Taoist way of thinking. In Catholicism, we say both and, not either or. But it's kind of that same principle. B.S. Lewis says in his very intellectual writings that spirit is called confirmation bias alpha. Now, I would love to agree with you, but I think you're wrong, B.S. Lewis. I think it's identifying the truth once you found it, because I found the truth somewhere else, and it pointed back toward Christianity. Bam. Another atheist, checked off. There we go. I said checked, by the way. I said checked.
With Jesus Christ. Now that might sound strange and crazy to you, but that's my story. God didn't lead me away from other world religions. He led me through what I experienced in reading the texts of the other world religions into a relationship with Jesus Christ.
Let's go next.
If you don't...
Oh, everyone's favorite. Everybody hates this guy. This is going to be great. This is going to be good. Okay. I know you're quaking in your boots. You can't stop quivering. B.S. Lewis.
Over it just briefly again because it's very important. So this is the Taoist symbol. That symbol is Tao. Tao essentially means meaning.
See, I don't understand
It
this.
also
I
means
was
the
saying
way.
everything.
It means a bunch of things. And Tao,
I want
for
to
the
complain about
Taoist, is
something.
what...
I was saying on my channel, and I realized my channel was popular at one point because I was talking about the Quran. I'm not talking about the Quran stuff. I'm talking about what I was putting out on my actual channel. Everything that Jordan Peterson has ever said, I've said on my channel, and I'm not rich and famous. And I said it long before he ever said it. I'm hurt. I feel very sad about this. I really, really feel like, hey, that's unfair. I'm fiery. Is it because it's because I'm not Canadian? It couldn't be the fact that I don't have any degrees, right? It has to be the fact that I'm not Canadian. Yeah, that's what it is. Oh, I'm sorry. I have an associate's in humanities of arts, and I have a certificate for tutoring. Sorry, I can't say I have no degrees, but whatever.
Things are made up. It's the underlying reality of things. And for the Taoists, that's more like meaning than it is like material. Or in some,
Look at how chubby he is back then. He has he's still skinny, but he has like that chubby face. That's the further he's gone into his ideology, the skinnier his face has gotten. So you can actually track where he is in his ideology based on how gaunt his face looks. Is it my so B.S. Lewis says I should try talking like Kermit. Is it the fact that I'm monotone? Is that what keeps me from being famous?
Another way you could think about it is more like information than it is like material. And so the Taoists think that experience, you can't say reality because it's not the same conception, that experience is...
Experience, you can't say reality because it's not the same conception. That is perfect. Where's the freaking... Let's put the words on there.
Meaningful. And that the meaning is the primary reality. And the meaning...
Meaning is primary reality, not experience, because experience can be colored through perspective, perception, and subjectivity.
It differentiates itself as it emerges, and it differentiates itself first into masculine and feminine, essentially, into the structure that you use to perceive reality, that's culture, and what it is that you're perceiving, and that's nature.
Culture and nature. So you're making a division here. But they bleed into each other. And they can't escape each other. There's a little bit of one in the other, and a little bit of the other in the one.
That it's a lovely conception. It's different than the way people look at the world in the modern world, but it's parallel, and I think it's, if not more useful, it's certainly equally useful because it.
So I found it more useful. I found, especially when I was living my life as a Taoist and as a Socratic, before I got into Stoicism and Christianity. I found this way of viewing the world extremely useful, extremely helpful. I was able to live for 15 years or however long as a martial arts instructor. That is not a lucrative business, not if you're not a famous person. But I was able to live very, both humbly and very, I don't want to use the word elegant, but I was able to enjoy the goods of life. I was able to eat steak once a week, like a huge, like a, 10-ounce porterhouse steak once a week. I was able to drink coffee or tea every day at a Starbucks or whatever local place I was supporting. I was able to go running. I was able to do everything that I wanted to do in life with a lower amount of income, living a Socratic Taoist lifestyle. And even in the beginning, as a Stoic Christian, I was able to do so. It was when I left behind Taoism and Stoicism that it became very hard financially to live a very humble lifestyle. My daily usage, my daily needs grew to a tremendous extent. And part of the reason why I quit my job was to control that, because I was beginning to act very unchristian in my collection of things, in my materialism. My materialism and my need for money and my desire for money had grown out of control. So when I quit my job, those were some of the factors. Yeah, my dad's the main factor, his dementia, but these were parts of my decision-making process, things that I considered.
How do you understand and articulate elements of your own experience that can't be understood from a framework that has a different underlying structure? So you know that sometimes you're comfortable and that things are going well for you, and you know that sometimes all hell's broken loose and you've fallen through the ice and you're dazed and confused and maybe you won't get up again, and you know that those are two different...
He's so Canadian, he said falling through the ice.
...places, and that you'd rather be in the former than the latter. And you also know that there's certain ways that you should act to make sure that you stay where it's comfortable and interesting, rather than wandering off to where it's like terrible beyond belief. Now, you could call that in some sense your innate sense of morality. It's a kind of intelligence, but it's deeper than that. And as I said in the other class, the other thing that's lovely about the Taoist interpretation is that it's the interplay between these two things that constantly brings reality forth, and that if you balance them properly, which is the aim...
I think my hand gestures are more appropriate to Tao than his hand gestures. I'm just saying.
...of a properly religious life from the Taoist perspective, then you have all the benefits of what you understand and what you're familiar with, order, and then you have the excitement of having one foot in the unknown.
So this is one of the things that really disappointed me about his second book. I'm talking about his two popular books. I read Maps of Meaning. Then there was 12 Rules for Life, and then Beyond Order. I think it's Beyond Order. That one really was disappointing because it was just reiterations of stuff that he didn't put in 12 Rules of Life that comes out of Maps of Meaning. So it was just like finishing Maps of Meaning on a popular level. But what I wanted him to do was do a book fighting against chaos and promoting the attributes of chaos, because he had already done order and he hadn't done void. And if you read 12 Rules for Life at the very end of his book, and I think also in the intro, he mentions how his next book is going to be a pushback against order. So he's promising the yin-yang approach. And he's saying, look, all of this, don't worry about if it sounds misogynistic. Don't worry about it if it sounds authoritarian, because my next book is going to be anti-authoritarian. It's going to be pro-feminine. And then the two books together will work as one product, as one structure. So when I read the second book, and I realized that he had had a mental breakdown and fame had gotten to him and he had some personal problems. But I was so disappointed that it was just the material that he didn't use from Maps of Meaning. That was a big disappointment. So the second book, Order, whatever, Beyond Order, is not high on my list. The first book, 12 Rules for Life, is one of my top 10, top 25 books of all time. The second book is like, it's down there in the dumps, dude. It's not worth reading. Read Maps of Meaning, read 12 Rules for Life, and then skip Beyond Order. It was very unsatisfying because it didn't do what he promised it would do. Again, what he promised in his book, 12 Rules for Life, not like he personally said he was going to do that. And if you listen to his early interviews before he had his breakdown after the book was out, he was promising that he would have this counterpoint to his first book in his second book, if he ever got the contract for it. He was talking kind of humbly. And he never did that. He never delivered on his promise. And that, to me, was more disappointing than any of the other stuff that people complain about him for.
And it's a perfect place for human beings to be, because not only do we want to stay with what we are and
I think he got stuck fighting the feminists, so he just couldn't bring himself to write a pro-feminist book. I think that's what happened.
serve it if it's good, but we want to continually transform it so that it gets better and better and better. So, and I can give you an example of this. I'll give you two quick examples, and you'll understand what I mean. So imagine you're watching a gymnastics performance, two of them. And the first performer comes out, it's like the Olympics.
And basically, this is known and unknown. So basically, what you want to do is you want to stay in the known, but you don't want to be so stable that you're not making any progress. But you don't want to be so far into the unknown that you're in like complete danger. You want to be pushing the edge, pushing the edge, pushing the edge. That's the idea that he's coming to here. Not that I've seen this before. I haven't. I read a lot of his stuff, and I used to watch his Bible stuff when he was doing that before he moved to Daily Wire. And even some of the Daily Wire stuff, when it moved back to YouTube, I watched that. I did not like his last 3 episodes on the Bible, on Exodus, because he did exactly what I was fearing he was going to do. So he got all the way to the slave passages, and then once he got to the dark stuff, he just flipped over and then started talking in generalizations. I was like, come on, face the stuff. You've been talking and hitting all the important stuff. You got to hit this. Even secular Bible commentaries do the same thing, where you get to a point that's a controversial, really big point, and they just don't have any commentary there. And I'm like, you put a commentary on whether or not an ephah is appropriate for the culture, but you won't talk about slavery, or you won't talk about the hypostatic union. It's right. It's this verse. You're not going to talk about it. It's so disappointing when authors and commentators, and Jordan Peterson does that.
The first performer comes out, and man, this person is like perfect. You can tell they've spent 10,000 hours, because that's what you need to master something. Like working on these routines, and like every single movement they make is impeccable. And the routine goes on for a few minutes, and then it ends, and the person's, they're triumphant about it. And everybody claps, and the judges are all like 9.9 out of 10. And people are pretty happy about that. And so we're all hooked into that because we've seen someone demonstrate mastery. And so we're thrilled about that, because it shows that that's what a human being can do. And we're human beings too. And so, yay for us. And so
maybe it's also my lack of mastery. That's why my channel's not more popular.
Then the next candidate comes out, and they've got a real problem, because, of course, what they have to face and overcome is perfection itself. And you might think, well, how in the world could you possibly do that? And so they get out there, and this performance is different. It's got everybody on the edge of their seats, because they watch that person go through their absolutely perfect routine, but they add one twist to it. They push it so hard that you can tell by watching them that at every single second of their performance, they're like this close to disaster. So they've taken their perfection and they've pushed it to the point where while they're competing, they're improving themselves. They're taking that risk. And that's the sort of phenomena that makes everybody in the audience go absolutely dead quiet, because everyone's on their edge of their seat thinking, oh my God, is this going to work? Is this going to work? Are they going to pull it off? And so
I know that nowadays people talk about parasocial relationships, but back in the day when TV was more popular, you would have this with football games and boxing matches and gymnastics, where you end up putting yourself in the person who's taking the higher risk, and you'll find yourself begging, praying, hoping that they win. They're not you. You don't know anything about them. You've never seen them before. You're never going to see them again. But while this event is going on, they become the most important person to you. And you're just like, I hope they win. I hope they win. I hope they win. It's kind of like the underdog effect. But it's the one who's taking the highest risk but pushing forward that you end up cheering for. When you don't have any dog in the fight, that is.
No, people are holding their breath and they're tied right into it. And then that person ends and, you know, they do their little triumphant landing and everybody's on their feet roaring. And that's because they just saw someone do this. Perfect mastery. Plus they pushed themselves beyond that. And so that's the proper way to play a game. You're not just playing it, but while you're playing it, you're improving your ability to.
Also, if you ever listen to his old courses, it sounds like he's really influenced by game theory when he talks about how to live a healthy psychological life in the real world and how to treat your patients and get them to be active in the world.
To play it. A medieval representation. Here's the gnome, and here's the explorer pushing his head out past the dome of the gnome. For a long time, that's what people thought reality was, right? It was this disc that everyone lived in with this dome over top of it. That's where the stars were.
I'm gonna I'm gonna skip the qigong stuff. I had it in there because I do some qigong exercises even today. They're just really good. It's like, you know, doing this kind of thing while you're breathing. It's really good for flexibility.
It's obviously the big question in Taoism and the first one that people explore. But what is, when we talk about the Tao of Taoism, what are people referring to?
Either this one or the next video is going to be the last one, guys.
If you look up the word in the dictionary, it has like over a dozen meanings. It can mean the way, direction, method, principle, and so on. In the simplest idea,
I think maybe
movement.
Taoism and Stoicism is part of the reason why I talk so boringly.
Moves.
Because everything's so calm.
Every atom, every subatomic particle, every molecule,
so important.
Up to the greatest star, the greatest galaxy,
moment at the same time.
Everything is moving.
You know what I'm saying?
So Tao is movement.
Tao is movement.
If you look at the word for Tao, it's a picture of a person represented by a head, and the V at the top is two tufts of hair. So there's a face there, and on the side it represents feet. It's a person moving, walking, and therefore a path forms. So now, if a person is in movement all the time, and that's undeniable.
You know, that's actually a very important thing when looking at Chinese, especially traditional versus the and Mandarin also. I'm not sure about Cantonese, but the symbols represent things. It's kind of hieroglyphic in a sense. When I'm only on like lesson like 10 of Chinese writing, but I noticed that the symbols actually mean something. They're not letter representations. They're actual like items. I think that's kind of cool. Once you label the Tao, you don't know the Tao. Correct. Someone's read his Taoism today.
Your heart is beating, you're breathing, you get up and walk around. And if everything else in life is moving, should we synchronize our personal movement with the universal movement and movement that surrounds you? Your kind of movement. How do you
still on the
synchronize
same topic
with that? To
next
try
one.
to prevent that
We're going on
attitude in my students, because it does nothing good.
Okay. 12 minutes too long.
Bad in
this one and then that one, and then I think we're done. Because I think we've got enough on what the meaning of the yin yang is.
When you die, you go to another life.
I was hoping to do
Maybe
the religious
heaven,
for breakfast
maybe
stuff, but we can
purgatory,
do that
maybe
tomorrow.
hell. These are the kind
if I don't
of
have an
questions.
interview. If I have the
In my
interview,
journey
we'll do the
through
interview
Taoism
first.
as it stands so far, I have noticed a few things about Taoism. One of the first things is how obscure it is for most people. For whatever reason, Taoism seems to have a relatively small following, even when compared with other Eastern philosophies such as Buddhism. This intrigues me because my journey through
So when I was in China, you'd see Buddhist, again, all religion is suppressed in China. The government has done so what they did, they destroyed all the temples, and then they rebuilt all the temples, and then they rebuilt the temples to look like the original temples, including adding the flaws from the original temples or damage to the original from the original temples, even though these are brand new structures. There was one in the heart of Guangzhou that was just beautiful, but the one that I liked the best was in, I think, Haiju Mountain. I think that was the just beautiful. Baiju, there we go, Baiju Mountain. That was a beautiful temple. And you have to walk up a mountain to get to it too. Like it made me like understand the Old Testament way better. I was saying something, I got distracted in a memory. Let's just keep going.
Philosophies such as Buddhism. For whatever reason, Taoism seems to...
Oh, so yeah, so even in China, Taoism is not the more popular one. So when you're looking at buildings, if someone was a Taoist, they'd have a little Taoist stamp or a little Taoist little thing hanging to let people know that this was a Taoist household, because the majority of religion in China is atheist, and the next biggest is going to be Confucian, and then after Confucian you got Buddhist, and Taoism's way down there. Taoism and Christianity are kind of fighting against each other. I don't know if that's actual numbers here. I'm just talking about the perception when you're there.
To have a relatively small following, even when compared with other Eastern philosophies such as Buddhism. This intrigues me because my journey through Taoism has been extremely rewarding, and I often wonder how it is regarded by other people. Since this topic has been on my mind a lot lately, it seemed to me that it deserved a video all to itself. So
I actually used to look for places to meditate, especially when I was deep into meditation. I was doing both yogic and Taoist meditation, and I would just try to find really unique and interesting places to meditate. And Eastern meditation is not like American Western meditation. So American meditation will be silent, and it will be so you'll be thinking about something, contemplating a thing instead of doing an internal processing. So you want absolute silence. You want to have no thought, zero thought when you're doing meditation in the Eastern sense. And it's just one position at a time. So you're not doing 12 positions. You're not doing a workout. It's not exercise. You're just getting in one position and staying in that position as long as possible, usually until you have a thought. So you want to get all the way down to silence, and you want to stay silent. You want to have no thought. The moment you have a thought or you have a realization, you've broken your concentration. You've now fallen out of your goal, and your goal is to stretch that out, that silent thought, that no thought, as long as possible. So it's just a different approach than like American yoga, which is just really exercise.
I present to you my perspective on why most people will not become Taoist.
Could we not do music, please?
As we attempt to dissect this topic of why more people do not choose to follow Taoism, we will steer away from obvious and general answers such as never having heard of it. While these are obviously extremely relevant factors, we will define the scope of this video to accommodate answers of a more humanistic nature. While certainly many people have not heard of Taoism, in this video we are more concerned with why someone who has heard of Taoism, and may even possess a rudimentary understanding of its teachings, might choose to reject them. I think one of the more obvious reasons of this nature for Taoism's relatively small following is simple. It forces us to acknowledge that we don't have everything together. Most of us are far too concerned with trying to convince other people that we have everything together to try to address why we actually don't.
I don't think that's true at all. I don't think that's most of the people who I found who have found Taoism helpful were in a place of chaos, and it was just ordering the chaos. Thank you, Jordan Peterson, for ruining that expression forever.
Taoism, as with any other avenue of self-improvement, shows us where we need to improve. It invites us to change not only our behavior, but our entire outlook on life. This is usually a rather uncomfortable process, and therefore most people want nothing to do with it. In the popular TV show Avatar: The Last Airbender, the hero Aang and his friends find an ancient library hidden in a vast desert, where they hope to find clues that will help them to defeat the main villain, Firelord Ozai.
One of the coolest
Upon arrival,
things
they
is
discover that the
finding,
library is guarded by the spirit Wan Chi
ancient
Thong.
libraries in
When they request access to the library, Wan Chi Thong initially forbids them. He informs what we want, and then to be cast aside when we were finished with it. Taoism is a road that largely rewards those who are sincerely interested in changing their life, and consequently.
So, like I said, my exposure to Taoism and Buddhism is limited to what's available in the U.S. as as books as you can go find at Barnes & Noble and Hastings. There was one of the temples that I went to, and they had this huge library of ancient texts that supposedly, again, everything's kind of controlled by the government, but that supposedly survived the purging during the Maoist revolution, or during the Great Day, or the Great, I forget what it's called. But anyway, these are books that supposedly survived, and the amount of text, the library, it's larger than any Christian library I've ever seen, even or any Jewish library I've ever seen. It's just so much writing, because you got to understand that the Chinese culture is so much older than American culture, than Western culture. It's older than Judaism. It's an ancient culture. So if any of these books were legit, it was cool to see that was there. My wife says that because they have to read the I Ching in junior high, I think. The way we have to read Shakespeare or Beowulf, and she says that it's unreadable. It's like Chaucer. She says that reading the old Chinese, the old Mandarin is unreadable. She's she hated it.
Consequently, many gloss it over. We as people generally are extremely adverse to the.
And so that's the thing. That reminds me of Christianity, how in Christianity you're supposed to give up your belongings and nobody wants to do it. And everybody, you meet modern Christians who worship money and materialism, and they don't understand that they're making idols out of them. I had been practicing Taoism for so long that when I went into cells, a lot of people didn't understand me when I would say I don't care about money. Money is not my goal. Money is a tool to help me do other things. And it comes from this. It comes from practicing Taoism for so long that materialism isn't just a bad word. It's totally evil in a way. So when you read it in the New Testament that Jesus says, it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to get into heaven, to give up all your belongings and follow me. How to be good, give everything to the poor, go give to charity, that kind of thing, give up your money. That's not shocking to me because I had been practicing a philosophy that taught that. So, I used to live very Spartanish, and I, both from Pancratian and from Taoism, both included or encouraged simplicity, minimalism. My wife's a minimalist, and she hates it when she comes to the U.S., and she does not like the amount of stuff I have in my house. She's a complete minimalist. And again, she's not a Taoist. She's just, that culture's influenced by Taoism, Buddhism, and Confucianism.
For worse, the great machine that is our modern capitalistic society is driven by desire and consumption, and extracting oneself from the philosophies and nuances of the culture one lives in can be extremely difficult. Worthless if we are not able to get the things that we want, or that we think we ought to want. Taoism invites us to change our perspective on what is really important in life, and
okay, this is going to be the last video for the night, guys, and I don't know if we're going to go through the whole thing, okay? And we'll do religion for breakfast the next time we cover Taoism. And the next Christian video we're going to do is the second half of Redeem Zoomer versus Trent Horn. We're not going to be doing the Christian simplicity or divine simplicity. his video or his interview was fine, but there was nothing exciting happening in that interview. It was very boring, very milquetoast. Very good, very appropriate, but just not exciting. But the Redeemed Zoomer versus Trent Horn one, that had a lot of tension in it. So we'll use that one again. We'll finish that off either this week or next week. And then tomorrow we have an interview. Sun Tzu and Lao Tzu have very similar stories of teaching combat arts. Sun Tzu, I think I mistaken earlier. I think Sun Tzu is the one who taught the warrior nuns. And Wushu is supposed to be a direct descendant from the martial art that Sun Tzu taught. Which again, probably not a real person, but still an interesting story.
Over time, but stories about Lao Tzu and the Tao Te Ching itself passed down through different Chinese philosophical schools for over two.
By the way, I saw this in a distance when driving around, but I saw these guys up close and personal. They are cool, and they remind me of the ziggurats of the Old Testament.
2,000 years, which is more than 2,000 years.
For people who don't understand why there's a T and a D, it's because the way that we translate the language has changed, not that the language has changed. Taoism, Chinese, so the language that we usually know for Chinese was actually Cantonese, and now the main language is Mandarin, because the Chinese government has mandated that everyone learns Mandarin and not their sub-language. So China used to have tons of different languages, different dialects, not just different dialects, but different languages. And now they're trying to make it all just one, and they're simplifying it. Now, because of that, the way that we translate it has changed. So there used to be one method where it had a T sound, and now the new method that scholars aren't exactly using, but popular people are, is now with a D sound.
Old and still popular today. There are at least 20 million Taoists, and perhaps even 500 million living around the world now.
I don't know how you get that 500 million number. That might not be true. But the first part, I believe. And the statues are huge, man. They're not little things. And people actually leave sacrifices on the altar that's outside. They'll leave, there's vending stores that sell foods, but they're not for you to eat. So they're donuts, they're waters, they're popular drinks, but you're not supposed to eat them. I mean, you can, but you're not supposed to. They go up to the temple and they put little snacks for the gods to eat. One of the dangers of living through this philosophy is that you can get stuck in a bad relationship real easy because you're just going with the flow. So if someone's being chaotic and a jerk and you're just like, yeah, okay, you're never going to break up with them. You're just going to be stuck in the relationship. So yeah, just know there's downsides to living a Taoist way of life.
Changing of leaves in the autumn, or the blossoming of the bulbs we planted months ago.
Also, ghosting is like set up for Taoism, where you just you don't even break up. You just get together, stay together while you guys are together, and then whenever the relationship's done, you don't even break up. You just walk away. So yeah, just be aware there are negative ways you can take all this stuff. The person who introduced me to Taoism was really big into the Beatles. I wonder if that's how he got into it. Okay, that's it. All right, guys. All right. This was fun. I know that this topic was not a big audience draw. We are going to do it again either on Thursday or we're going to do it on Monday. We'll finish out the Religion for Breakfast analysis of Taoism. And this was a good primer. So anyone who watched this video, you got a really good understanding of what Taoism is, how the yin yang works. So we'll get into Religion for Breakfast. Religion for Breakfast, I guess that'll be next week, probably next Monday. All right. Peace, like, and subscribe. Talk to you all later. Have a good one. See you tomorrow, 10:30.
You can still go, even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 yo, go, go, go. Hustle hard, hustle every single day. I'll be making moves till I'm buried in my grave. To the system, I don't wanna be a slave. I've been doing shit my way, or the highway. And in the driveway is a nice range. Cause I grind through the climb, I invite pain. You'll never hear me, bitch, nah, I don't complain. Just gotta flip the switch and you can go and obtain anything you want, anything